You're watching Inside iOS Dev, your favorite show about real world iOS development.
Hey guys, we have Saurabh again joining us with another set of interview questions. This is going to be another one of those episodes where we try to sort of mimic an interview, but not really because it's three of us, right? And we have more time and all of that. But take the questions that you might have on your interview, perhaps system design interview specifically, because they look like it. And we try to solve it together, see where we end up and how our thinking process here goes. And we'll diagram. So there's going to be no code, but there's going to be diagrams. Saurabh, thank you for the questions. This is fantastic for us to practice and maybe help other people out. So it seems like what we have here is group of questions, problems that revolve around offline, having an application work in offline mode. Let's say first one, if you have to show local data when there's no internet connection and have this logic of displaying it and fetching the data. First problem, right? Where to check the internet connection or absence of it. So what do you guys think? Let's first, I guess, talk it through as like the first problem, and then we can go through the rest.
Before we think where to check, the first question should be how to check that
I
there is
suppose,
no
huh?
internet connection, right?
Yeah.
So what I used to do in my projects was there is a famous library called F networking. It used to provide a handy class which tells us about when the internet connection goes on or off, right? But the caveat here is that we had to initialize that object right in the app delegate. So right from the start our app, we used to get the notifications via delegates or via notification center, but we used to get those callbacks directly from it. So one way to solve that problem is using that thing. Do you have any other solution in mind?
There is a reachability
Right.
framework,
Right.
I
So
believe. Yeah.
yeah, so under the hood, it uses reachability framework only.
Right. And I think reachability, I don't think I ever used it like directly from, so it's Apple's reachability is Apple's framework, AF networking's third party, right? There is a CockerPod library wrapper around Apple's reachability. I think it's called reachability or something as well, or similar name.
Disability shift.
Yeah, right? Something like that. I'm sure if listeners, viewers Google, they'll find it. But point is, that's another way of doing it that I've done. Yeah, I did AF networking as well before. Another one is reachability. And I think AF networking, so it's a general purpose library for network requests, but it also, as you said, Sandeep, has it built in, the some sort of ability to check. But then reachability is made for it, right? It's specifically single purpose internet checker, I guess, or connection checker. Okay. Well,
Right.
most likely there's other similar solutions probably built on top of reachability as well, right? Because we kind of have to use what Apple provides us. As I was researching at some point on briefly on it, there was some other networking library that Apple has with like more low level TCP thing where you check packets or whatever. Don't remember the name, and I suppose if you really want to go that deep, crazy low level, you could. Likely impractical for most developers unless you're in a big company and you have resources. But either way, I mean, unless you guys have other ideas, I guess like this is good enough in terms of potential tech to use.
I have one thing. Imagine if someone is giving an interview and they don't have to use some external libraries. So they have to write their own HTTP client generic function to use URL session. And then with that, create a service layer or something to get the data to which service layer will interact with the HTTP client, which we have made. So let's roll it there that if you have your own little networking interface where your service is interacting with, so we can put it over there in that frame of thing.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. I would say this, either way, regardless of which one of these you would use, at the end of the day, you're either using low-level Apple frameworks or you're using an abstraction built around them. From your overall applications architecture perspective, what matters is you have some sort of a object that's responsible for, and then let's figure out what it should be responsible for, right? Potentially simply telling anyone interested, notifying them of internet status change, whether you're online, offline, and even maybe ideally telling you, oh, you're online, but your internet connection is medium strength, low strength, or full strength, or you're on Wi-Fi. Maybe you want to know for some reason, right? So an object that does something like this, what would you guys think we could call it?
Reachability notifier.
All right, fair enough. I like how you like simultaneously said it.
Right. We can follow protocol oriented programming. Like in terms, right now we are architecting it though, but I'm also thinking it in terms of actually implementing it. So this can be a protocol right now, right? We can hide the implementation detail in the concrete object, what will be the actual notifier will be. But thinking it from the architecture perspective, it's just an object which is supposed to notify us about the reachability. Right?
Yeah, essentially, there could be any sort of a low-level implementation of whichever one of these libraries we would pick and use, or maybe we go in crazy C++ implementation. To be honest, it doesn't matter, right? For the rest of your app, exactly what you said, Sandeep. This is the higher level, even though still low level, but higher level abstraction that the rest of the app works with. And then for now, we can say like the app, right? Does this. Okay, so we established that, right? Now, I think out of these questions, this one is sort of related, right? From the get-go. How do we check it, right? So what do you guys, okay, let me ask you, I have some ideas. What do you guys think?
Like many other objects in the app, this should be the only single object in the whole app, which should be responsible for notifying reachability. There should not be multiple objects made in the app. So this should be the one and only object in the app's life cycle. And let me also emphasize that this doesn't mean that it should be a singleton. So Alex is happy now.
Oh, I am very happy
So
now, yes.
yeah, so it doesn't mean that it is need to be a singleton. We don't require it to be a singleton. But what we can do is we can just initialize it once, maybe in app delegate or at any high order place which is available in the app. And then we can just reference it anywhere we need it.
Bingo, huh? Yes, that's what I was gonna say as well. Single object for the whole app, not a singleton though. And we can, well, actually, let's talk about why not a singleton, right? You are having this thing as a singleton, you will couple you will cheat, and instead of doing proper dependency injection, you'll couple your whole application by plugging it everywhere willy-nilly, right? Like without any, how do I explain it? Like a structured, thought through approach of dependency injecting specifically, which might have unintended consequences and might mean that if we ever change this guy, there's just so many places that it affects without even knowing and relying on a protocol rather than particular implementation. That's another part. If we have a single object of this, which will be used throughout the app for whoever's interested in being notified about reachability or internet connection, they all should not rely on this concrete implementation of this reachability notifier that we came up with, but a protocol or interface protocol. Right? Then how do we I guess app delegate, I think, is where we would create it, right? And in a sense, well, we can have more abstractions and sort of dependency constructors or whatever objects, right, that compose all of it. But ultimately, it sparks from the app delegate did finish launching or one of those methods where everything starts. And then what do we do after that? Let's say we have a couple of screens. And in this case, I mean, we don't have a specific application we're working towards, right? So let's say this is a login screen. I don't know, for whatever reason. And then this is
Landing string.
what was it?
Landing. Main
Landing.
landing.
Yeah, landing and
Main-
login.
Yeah, main landing. So,
And then another screen that we have is like, I don't know, some sort of a feed screen with data displayed to the user for the user, right? And then many more. And when I say screen, I guess it depends on the architecture we choose, right? It could be either one object, just a view controller, or a collection, like a view controller or view model, or even the whole view controller, interactor, router, presenter, and so on, depending on the architecture you chose. All right. Let's say two of these screens, not this one, but two of these, want to check reachability, right?
So I think here we can have two approaches. First one is the reactive approach, and other one is the imperative approach. If I want to do something, I will first ask the reachability notifier via app delegate that whether the internet connection is available or not, and then I will do something, right? The other approach is that reachability notifier via some way, either via delegate or either via notification center, tells me that the status of reachability is this. It is either on or it is either off. And then I do something. So that all depends upon the use case, right? What all
Mhm.
use cases we have.
we can conform to that protocol, but the problem is every controller we have to conform to that protocol if we are going through that approach. But as Mandeep said, that notification, through notification, we can get the status of the reachability notifier. So you have to listen that. You have to observe that notification on controllers. Whether it should be like some base controller of controllers where we listen that stuff and that we override in controllers, so that we should not write the repetitive code again in every controllers.
Okay, I like this. So I think you guys, I'll try to paraphrase and maybe summarize, but I think you touched upon 3 or 4 different ways to go about it. So let's actually talk all of them through with their pros and cons, because that might help whoever's working on this to decide which way to go. And for the sake of simplifying it, let's actually say that this is a view controller, right? Each one of them, to just not overly complicate yet. So one way is imperative, kind of what you were saying, Sandeep. And then another way is reactive. Sorry, let me restate. Then a third way is key value observation through the notification center. And then, what was the fourth one? Something you said, Saurabh, about base class. I guess it sort of falls into imperative way, maybe. But it is a way to go about it. Maybe. But first of all, though, let's start with imperative, probably the simplest way and most straightforward.
Okay, so by imperative, I mean, let's say that on the landing screen, I want to show a strip to the user about, hey, although you are inside the app, but the internet connection is not good or you are offline, right? In that case, I'm following either the imperative approach. I can follow actually both the approaches in this case. So if I'm following the imperative approach, that, okay, I will first check the status and then I will show this banner to the user, okay, you are offline, right? The other way is that reachability notifier is notifying me, or it's notifying the landing view controller.
Okay, wait.
Hey,
Before we go into that one, let's talk through how would that imperative checking go. I would assume then in this case, and as you said, we have like a strip or piece of UI in landing view controller. It could be similar piece of UI or similar-ish in another screen as well, or view controller, right? So the same would apply for any one of them. These two guys would then inject, right, the reachability notifier, and then every time the imperative check would be every time they would like to update the UI to show to the user, or green circle for being online and red for being offline, they imperatively pull the data, right, from this guy to get the answer.
Mhm.
And hypothetically, you could do that every 5 seconds, for example, or something like that, right? Put an arbitrary time frame and then just have an S timer or whatever it's called to or delayed job with Grand Central Dispatch repeatable job to do that. It has its downsides, right? And this is why I want to talk it through. It will work, but you are straining resources of your device, or the CPU cycles, battery, or whatnot, trying to pull this every time. And maybe 90% of the time you have internet connection and you're asking this thing to check it again for no reason, right? Which means most likely this approach is actually not a good idea. Plus, what if you have a lot of view controllers or a lot of complex UI displaying at the same time, and each one of those pieces, you have a complex product screen with lots of parts, and they're themselves view controllers, and they all want to know it. So they all will be checking it every 5 seconds or however often, right? You multiplying the problem. So in this sense, this probably will not be a good solution, right, to go for. Or even worse, think each one of the cells in the feed wants to know whether it's online or not for whatever reason. Oh, then it just blows up. Okay, so then, and then Sadeep, you were saying, then another approach, more reactive, or delegating notification, right?
Right. So as you said that we can inject this reachability notifier in the landing view controller, and then further we can subscribe to the delegate of this. The landing view controller can be the delegate of the reachability notifier, such that whenever reachability notifier notifies, whenever the connection changes, it just updates those methods. And as a delegate of this notifier, the landing view controller will listen to those callbacks and will react accordingly.
Okay, so that's another approach. Similar scenario where we, again, sorry, I'll summarize, but add details. We inject, right, in one or the other, the object, reachability object, and then we register ourselves, meaning this view controller or this one, as one of the reachability delegatees. And then reachability notifier has to have an array internally or some other data structure to keep track of all of the objects to notify. And then when reachability figures out, based on the low level implementation, that network connection changed, it will loop through all of them and notify them one by one, or maybe even a parallel if you parallelize it in the background thread, I suppose. But it will do it in that sense. It is more reactive. It is still sort of imperative, not exactly imperative. I guess the implementation under the hood of keeping track of the array and all of that stuff is more manual and simpler, but it will work.
Actually, I want
Yeah.
to chime in here and said there, because generally in an application, you will be on a single screen, right? If you're on a mobile application, there will be just one single screen. Although one screen can have multiple view controllers, but there will be definitely a limit to it. How many controllers you can assume that a single screen can have, right?
True. But what if you
Right.
have a drill down a UI, right, with a navigation stack, and then you're 5 levels deep, right? Something like this.
I mean, if it's a navigation stack, that means those controllers, those child controllers will be initialized after when we do perform some action, right? So in that case, those controllers have not been initialized yet. And that reachability notifier doesn't need to inform all those future child controllers about the notification change, about the reachability change, right?
True. Would need to notify every existing one though in a chain.
Right, right, right.
Right. Yeah.
But
So
what I
Mhm.
essentially wanted to say that there will be not like that, there will be like thousands of controllers in the single
Yes.
screen where we have to notify each and every of them about the reachability change.
It's true. That's a good point. Yeah, unless if it's an iOS app, your screen is limited. Even if it's an iPad screen, probably there isn't too many. Perhaps hypothetically, if we were building a Mac app instead, then there could be not just giant screen because you have more real estate with a lot of UI elements, but also multiple windows. So then yes, but you're right, we're still not getting to thousands of objects anyway. So this is very feasible approach, actually.
Right. And one more point, that even if you have like tens or hundreds of view controllers in a single screen, well, that's not quite possible. I haven't seen any app which does that. But even if it is there, that doesn't mean that every single controller needs to be a reachability delegate, right? Because generally the main screen of yours is responsible for showing a strip or reacting to the network change, right?
That's
Does that
actually
make sense?
Good point. Yeah. Even if you have a complex screen with this feed being composed of whatever multiple children thingies under it, there is only one that really is showing, kind of cares about the online state
Right.
to change the UI and react to it specifically. Yeah. Great point. One last thing I wanted to add. Another sort of caveat in this implementation, if we're going about it, keep in mind that you probably want to have a set here, maybe not an array actually, even though I said an array, so that you don't have duplicates. Just in case for whatever reason you don't want to notify the same object twice, right? So you don't want it to show up.
That's
So
a good
either
point.
do a check
Right.
when you add a new object so it doesn't get into an array, or use a set or something. Okay, so there is that reactive way. There is another reactive approach, which is still conceptually the same, but a different implementation of reactiveness. You could be using a library for subscriptions to react to the same broadcast that this reachability notifier does about network changes. You could either use RxSwift or nowadays Combine, probably, right? Or any other implementation of a similar data streaming. So the approach would be similar in the sense that you would inject reachability notifier, although perhaps you could inject the actual stream object instead that this guy will produce. And it depends on your implementation of the library you're using, but most of them can give you for RxSwift, it's an observable object, or for Combine, it's called
Publisher, yeah.
So you would inject that into any one of those, again, interested objects or view controllers in observation, or better yet, just inject the reachability itself. So if you ever change that underlining streaming thing, it doesn't matter much. And then you would subscribe to it in those objects using the means of that framework. So for RxSwift, observable subscribe, and you get a subscription object that you probably want to dispose of when this view controller is deallocated, right? Or each one of them that subscribes is deallocated. I think conceptually the same way Combine works. I don't know what it produces, what the name is of that after you subscribe to the stream, but there is some disposable, probably is the name or similar. And yeah. And then under the hood now,
Cancelable. Actually, it's in Combine, it's cancelable.
Cancelable. Okay, yeah, makes sense. And then under the hood, this guide now doesn't keep track anymore of the reachability notifier, doesn't keep track of those objects that subscribed. It just simply says, hey, this stream, like the data changed, broadcast. And if any people care, they'll get notified. Okay, and then there's a third way that we talked about, is key value observation, right? And broadcasting via that. So conceptually,
So I know what you're going to say.
yeah,
Alex, that,
Sandeep, you know what I'm gonna say about it. But
yeah, that it will not be testable, right?
yeah, it's very error prone.
Mm-hmm.
I would give it one sort of credit, if you will. In spirit, it is similar to reactive observation, the last one we just talked about, right? Or maybe even the more imperative implementation of it, actually, now I think about it, where there is a list of subscribers somewhere under the hood and you manually say, oh, I want to listen to this particular event. But there is no object injection happening, right, with it. It's a singleton concept of a singleton that you have notification center default object available to everybody and everything throughout the application. People never inject it. They just refer to it directly. There is no protocol, as far as I remember, behind it. And it's error prone, right? Oh man, it's been years since I've done it. I think you subscribe by like a stream key, right, guys?
Yeah.
Or
We have
something.
to add observer. We have
Add
some methods
observer.
called add observer,
Mm-hmm.
which through which we subscribe to.
Define the method. We define the method with the key
Right.
name.
Yeah.
observer. And we in the delete we have to remove that observer also.
And then there's that. So that's not that bad. Conceptually, you also have to dispose of subscription with those other frameworks, but it's more compile safe because you actually operate with objects with a type, where this thing is yet another key value match that you might miss, forget. And as you said, Sandeep, it's so difficult, if not impossible, to unit test. And I also don't remember why. I think because this thing is not mockable, right? It's a global singleton. And
Right.
yeah. So all in all, it's one of those pieces of technology that Apple gave us, and it was great way back in the day when iOS just started. But by now we have better means of handling and dealing with something like this and being more explicit about it by a dependency injecting some object that will give you that observation capabilities. Yes, it is more code, and yes, you can cheat and do it faster with KVO default center thing, but please don't.
I guess if I have to show the local data and where to put the logic to fetch data. So logic to fetch data,
Right.
right? So
Fetch data as in from DB and network at the same time. If you didn't get the network data, means if you didn't get any data from network that there's an internet connection error, then you just swap the data to the data source from local DB.
Right.
So actually there is an elegant way to do that. So
Okay.
we actually did that in our projects, remember, Alex, by using protocol oriented programming. I mean, you can just switch the data source depending upon your network is reachable or not, right? And everything else will just remain same. You just change one thing and the rest of the implementation will remain just the same.
So,
okay, let's talk about it. Yeah, go ahead. So
we will be keeping two data sources then.
Yes.
Means one is for local and one is from the network.
Yes. The protocol will be just one. Like we can define one protocol. Hey, fetch me this data. Okay. And the one data source will actually do the real work, fetching it from either the DB or from the network, whatever you like, right? And the other implementation would work for offline mode. It will fetch the data according to your whim, whether you want it from your cache or from your local DB, right? What I mean to say is that you just need to code it once. You just need to inject. I want to emphasize here the dependency injection here, that you just need to just inject one type. Let's call it like data fetcher. That will be a protocol, right? You just need to inject one type and then you will call some methods on it, on the data fetcher itself. Hey, data fetcher, get me some data. And when you get that data, you will use that data to show it in your views, and that's it. That's the implementation part. That's done. Now whenever you want to switch the data source, let's say you are offline now, what you will do is you will initialize that controller with just another data source, that is offline data source, instead of the real data source which you were supposed to pass to get the data from the network. So instead of passing that data source, you will pass that data source which is responsible for fetching the data while you are offline, and that's it. The rest of the application will work as it is. You don't need to change a single thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I was thinking, imagine we have feed view model, and then there we have one data source, and with feed view controller talks to the view model not directly, then put the protocol means or the dependency is inverted over here. So when the service layer talks to the network, what I am thinking, so I'm just telling that. So if the service layer talks to the internet, it fails to bring you the data. Okay, so we got some error code like internet connection error, something like that. So in the error completion of that service protocol, which is bringing data to the view model or the interactor, we can from there itself, we just return the data from the our local storage to the view model or the interactor. And
Now you are mixing two kind of business logics here. So one is the offline mode and another one is the online mode. There can be instances when you don't get data in either, even if you're online, there could be the instance when you will not get data because of some errors at the backend, right? Or maybe some faulty API requests. So that doesn't mean that you should just switch to the offline mode, right? For
I was
detecting
thinking about
offline mode, we have just made that architecture just now, right? That we will detect the offline mode using this architecture. We will
Right.
depend upon these delegate methods.
Okay. So, Sandeep, yes and no. And I think we can combine both.
Mhm.
All right. I want to talk through what you originally was suggesting, Sandeep, and then I want to talk through, Saurabh, your suggestion, but with a tweak. But I would say one thing right now. There is a merit to seamless UI switch from for you to react to app suddenly getting into offline. You could still seamlessly, as much as possible, of course, react to it by potentially swapping data source under it. But you're, Sandeep, you're right. There are challenges to it, and you have to think of your underlying data structure differently. But we'll get to it. First, though, so what you're suggesting, Sandeep, is official, not official, but there is a decision tree there, right? There is a point where, so it's sort of like a question, if online, right? And then there's two options, kind of. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you're describing, Sandeep. There is, in both cases, we go to the feed view controller. But in one scenario, let's say we have that view model thing, right? In one scenario, the view model will use a service to fetch data online. And then in another scenario, it would use, roughly speaking, a storage to get data from the disk, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And this is why one way of handling it. It greatly depends on the product decision on how to handle that situation, right? So there was another screen from which we got here. And at the time when we were trying to get there, we knew the last state of being online or offline based on the broadcast of this guy, right? This other view injected it and was observing it. And at the time of the push or presentation, we made the decision, yes, we initialized the same view controller with the same view model, but we either gave it service or storage. And these guys in this case implement the same protocol so that the view model doesn't know with which it talks, right? It has its downsides of, let's say you got into the online version of it, right? You're in that screen now. And at this point in time, while you were scrolling it, this is trying to fetch it from the internet, but the network fell, right? What do you do there? And then the other way around, we got into offline status, but you finally got out of subway, got internet connection, but this thing doesn't know how to talk to the internet anymore, right? Then I think, Saurabh, this is what you're describing. Okay, so we got into this situation. How do we seamlessly handle that somehow? By, well, having basically one scenario really of you're getting to this screen, but potentially you swapping the data sources as you scroll down, as you sit in the screen, look at it, right? And you, while you were online, you're using this guy, you're fetching, new page, new page, new page. But then you got offline, you start to use this guy to fetch, like, let's say 2 pages were fetched with this online thing, and then the third page you're trying to fetch with feed storage, right? Then we get the problem of what you were saying, Sandeep, of, well, how can we even do this? This thing doesn't have any data, right? And that probably is the case where it's probably true, and it will be a showstopper and you cannot really fetch the next page. But what we could do, and it's also sort of a partially a product decision. Imagine that, how do I explain it? If we fundamentally always make, even in online mode, make the storage the source of truth and the priority from which this view model and any other feed things that care about feed objects get the data, then this becomes like a secondary thing to fetch the data and put it inside of the storage. Every time throughout the app, we're trying to, let's say you're fetching the next page, maybe you can ask the actual data for the next page you're getting from the storage, but then you ask the feed service to fetch 2 pages ahead. If you really know that most likely the user would want to see those pages. So you're doing this upfront fetching and it gets written into this storage. If that makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm like making it up because we don't have a real use case and real UI to show. But then it will give you a buffer. So if you suddenly, this drops, right? You can't fetch anymore, no internet. Then you don't even need to switch because you were always fetching from the storage, right? And it has that next page and maybe one ahead. Or even better, perhaps in some other part of the app, you already fetched some of those, right? You opened individual items of the feed. And every time you do that, even when you fetch one, it gets written to storage so that next time, again, the feed can actually look at it and display. And I'm almost done. I want to hear your thoughts, but there is a big problem with it too, because for feeds specifically, right, it might be a very bad use case because the backend determines and decides with its algorithm where in the feed things are positioned and what goes in what order, because there's some algorithm for it, right? Then the client side can either, it's difficult and we have to replicate backend logic on the client side, or it just simply cannot decide that whatsoever, right? Then again, it doesn't work anymore as sort of a, doesn't work as well, right? And you have to at some point drop, well, stop showing anything because you can't to the user, right? Anyway, your thoughts, because I'm sure I missed a bunch here.
Think putting directly in some feed storage from two kind of services, one from the network service and another from cache or local DB service, won't it make this solution a bit more complex?
Yes.
And as you said that as you said that the feeds positions are decided based on some logic, business logic by backend, they will also be hampered. So I don't think this would be the best solution for this problem.
Yeah, most likely not. Most likely it's not gonna work for something like this.
So we can save what data we have got from service. So we can save while updating the table, means the list, where we are showing the UI. We can save somewhere that data in our local DB. At the same time, we
Yeah.
get the data from the service. So we tell the presenter to reload the UI, and then behind that we can save those data to the our local DB. And whenever whenever in meanwhile while scrolling we get the no internet, so we are not going to adjust those page numbers and all, because we are showing all the data which is saved in the local DB.
Right. Okay. So I see what you mean. This
Again,
would-
when the internet comes, then the means the page loads, and then the page number is already means increased then.
Right. Okay. So this will work in some sequential what you're describing would work, and this setup would work for simpler sequential scenarios of non-algorithmic feeds, right? Like something in order of IDs or something in chronological order or something like that, right? So what you're describing, Mr. Saurabh, is one round of there's like 2 cycles to it. First cycle, the user opens this feed first time. There is no data whatsoever. Asks the view model or presenter or interactor, whatever you have, to fetch the data. It will check with the storage. There's nothing in the storage. It will ask simultaneously or after it the service to fetch it from the backend. The service fetches it from the backend and tells the feed, here's the 20 items. Let's say it's pagination of 20, right? And then in parallel with that, either the view model or the service itself, probably the view model because it's the business logic, tells the storage to save those 20 items, right, in the database. And then it tells the view to display it. Then the user scrolls, we fetch the next 20 items, 20 items. So let's say in this scenario, the user saw 3 pages. Then the user clicks back, right, taps back and goes back to whatever other screen, then comes back here. Now, for this second round, the view asks the view model to give me the first page. The view then gets it immediately without this service call from the storage because it already has it. And then displays it. Then the next one, right? The next one. So I think that's what you're describing, right, Saurabh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, yes, right? It might work, but you probably have the algorithm behind, right? Or what if something changed? What if one of the items was removed? And now you're out of sync with the source of truth, the global source of truth, the backend. So it's sort of for only specific types of data and problems, it might work. You kind of always need to be checking with the backend. But if it's super critical for your users to have at least some data, even if it's slightly inaccurate, but have it offline, then sure, this might be all right. And then when they get back online, you need to figure out sort of an algorithm here of how you're checking with the backend, whether this list that was cached is invalid now. Perhaps you have some hash number, and each time a page is loaded or whatever, you give it the last page's hash or something, and then the backend checks, okay, this hash is not true anymore. Here's a new page or whatever.
Basically, we have to make our own synchronization mechanism to maintain the source of truth here, because ideally the source of truth should be one, the backend.
Yeah.
But now we are making 2 source of truths here, so the second source of truth should always be in synchronous with the first source of truth.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, and this is why this becomes so complicated and so error prone. What if you're not invalidating this list correctly? Then now all of a sudden, even if you're online, the users are seeing stale data. Again, greatly depends on your use case, unfortunately. We can't like tell right now, prescribe the best solution because of depends on your scenario. But this are the problems you would face, right? But then also one thing to keep in mind, Sandeep, when you say synchronization, some people might understand synchronization as, let's say, something in the app delegate or somewhere there that you constantly run periodically every 5 minutes or something, or every time the app opens or closes to sync all the data. That's quite often how product owners or other people who are not aware of this complexity of backend algorithms and synchronizing think of it. That is, I would say, in my experience, 90% of the time, not a good solution. Don't want to go for that. Because it's hard to predict. Either you have to sync the whole database of the entirety of your backend data for this account, or only portion. But then how do you determine what portion you sync? All right, then you either make you be very clever and make assumptions. Oh, probably users watch these feeds most, so let's just sync them. Or you have a machine learning algorithm to figure it out for you, but you need the really big data for that. So that's
How
hard.
about the last updated timestamp?
Or that, but how many items do you like? It depends on your amounts of data, right? If it's hundreds, maybe it's enough. What if you have thousands of records, tens of thousands?
Right.
Maybe you can make a decision based on that too. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad choice. If the most relevant last thing that was touched in your system is what's most relevant, sure, then that's your indicator, right? But who knows? Depends on the app you're building.
And it will become much more complex if the use case includes that a user can change that data offline as well. I mean, although I have downloaded an object into my database, but now let's say a user puts a like on it. Now I need to update the DB. The like field is 1 now or 2 now, right? So I have to sync back that data to the server, right?
Yeah.
Basically, in a nutshell, all I'm going to say is that we need a synchronization mechanism. We need to figure out on our own algorithm to deal with this stuff, right?
Yeah. And I think something I want to stress again with all of this conversation, you have two choices to make on how you fundamentally structure your code. Either what your view model / interactor / presenter, whatever business logic object, either what it holds in memory, like its internal array of this feed items or its internal whatever dictionary of it or whatever you have, either that you're treating and in your mind that is the source of truth for UI and for everyone else to work with, and storage and service that fetch it or save it are like a secondary helper thing, or you treat the storage as that main thing that is the source of truth for anyone, and anything that's in memory is the secondary thing. It's hard to explain. It's easier to kind of show when you build in an app like this. And I've done it one time where most of the time you would want in memory data be the source of truth, actually. But one time I implemented like this database is the truth kind of strategy. It has its benefits, and it's kind of actually cool because then you, by default, out of the box, you get this easier offline capability, right? What we talked about, the scenario of you viewing the feed once and then viewing it second time, boom, you already have it. But it comes with a boilerplate of now everything that you have in your system, you have to store, like the data models coming from server or the user, you have to by default immediately store every time into the database, which adds so much code, right? Core data insertions and updates and stuff, then fetching, then mapping that to whatever else you need to map it to. It's hard.
Yeah.
But I would say that I don't. One thing I've heard, and I briefly read about a recent rewrite of, well, recent-ish, maybe a year ago or so, a rewrite of Facebook Messenger application. Apparently, they decided to redo it, and the way they approached it was kind of like that, where the storage was like the source of truth and everything else reacts to its changes. Again, it has its own pros and cons. They claim that, oh, they move so much faster and so on, right? I don't know, it might be shiny syndrome object where it's like, oh, it's a new cool thing and we think we'll move faster, but ultimately it's too much boilerplate of writing everything to disk. They claim it gives them better kind of ability to react and have every part of the app be on the same page with in terms of data display of like the actual truth. And I suppose in the Messenger app, maybe that's true. I don't know. But then why a Messenger app needs to be offline? Well, I guess
Does
a little
FB
bit.
Messenger app works offline as well?
I suppose. I mean, they do need to actually. Now I think about it, because if you're offline, you want to message something, and then it should take it, and then when you're back online, should send it. I suppose, huh?
Do we have that feature in
I
FB
think
Messenger
so.
app?
I believe, yeah.
Okay.
And WhatsApp probably too.
Oh wow, I never tried it.
But what I'm trying to say is that's where that model of like everything synced, saved by default is kind of paramount. And perhaps you can actually more or less deterministically say what on the client side, what goes first in this list, what goes second, because you have date timestamp of messages. But for a more feed suggester type of thing, like a Twitter app or Reddit or whatever, and others, you either have too much data, probably, that the client side just can't hold, or there's an algorithm behind it, and you can't authoritatively say client side what goes first, what goes second, sort order.
I think instead of discussing where to put the logic, we discuss the synchronization strategies, right?
It's true.
That was not the ask of the question, right? Yeah.
Putting the logic was part of it. It's just goes somewhere here, in the business object of yours, whatever you decide the business object of yours to be.
Ultimately, it will be the product decision. What Saurabh said actually, that when we get no data from the service, should we just directly switch to the offline service mode and show the data directly from the local database, right? But for the implementation, should we follow this way? If we do the implementation of this, will we just directly switch the service or the view model of that view controller based on the output of the network service? I don't think so. We should do that, because that logic of deciding whether we should switch to the offline mode DB or the network service DB, that should rely on just one thing, like reachability notifier, right? What reachability notifier is telling us. Although we can achieve the same behavior what product wants us to do, that if we don't get that data from the network service, we can communicate that thing back to the view model. Hey, we didn't get any data. And in the view model, which is a business logic center, ideally should decide what it should do. Either it should raise an error, hey, you are offline, or it should just seamlessly switch to the offline mode, thereby also showing that banner that you are offline.
It comes to the product call, like use case, what they're going to solve. Yeah.
Right. But now I'm talking about the implementation, that not this decision should not be made in the service layer, that we should switch to which database or from where we should pull the data.
I agree with you, Sandeep. I do think it's a combination of between these two data from these two places for this guy to decide it. On one hand, you get a piece of information, piece of data from the service. Let's say you fetch 3 pages, you try to fetch page number 4. The piece of data that you get back from this guy is a failure, right? A failure of the request. Then, but you question it, can you determine, is it offline because I'm failed because I'm offline or not, right? I think so. I think
we determine that? First question, can we determine that
I don't remember,
the
to be
API
honest.
failed?
It's like under the hood, everything ultimately is almost everything is an SURL session for networking on iOS. So if that thing gives you some piece of data back on connection drop, I think, is something like that they can let you know about. Perhaps you can treat that as an indicator of, oh, I got no network anymore. But it also could be just a slow network and it intermittently dropped. I think Apple has like an article saying that this is actually very hard to determine.
So I have a solution for that. When you don't get any data from the service, you will tell that thing to view model, hey, I didn't get any data. Now view model can talk to reachability notifier, hey,
Yep.
is the network on or not? And then there you can decide, okay, the network was not on. Now you can switch the service. Or okay, the network was on, I don't know why you didn't get any data. Maybe nudge the user to fetch the data again,
Yeah.
or retry the last request.
And it will
Right.
be again a product decision. Maybe even if you're
Yes.
online, but the server dropped, right? Like your backend could have been dead, right? But you still
Right.
show offline data because the product wants you to do that. Maybe not.
Right.
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 Yeah, I agree. But yes,
Ultimately, that should be the view model's call, right? That's
Yeah.
all I want to say.
Yes. Yeah. View model interactor, something like that. The business center
Yeah.
is called.
Right.
What about checking to the client, HTTP client, which is talking to the network? So imagine it has a generic function to get the data, and then you the view model has told the service to talk to the client. So when the function goes over there, then that HTTP client, while executing the requests, if the network goes, means you check from reachability notifier and you get the status that there is no internet. So you can return a particular error to the service, like before going to call the net to have a network request.
I see.
Is it good or bad? Means what are the thoughts on that?
I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe there was a mention in one of the Apple documentations that you shouldn't like 100% rely on this as like being if it says no internet, still try, they say. I think, if I'm not mistaken, still try to do a network request, because it might be that this is not like giving you the accurate data or something. And then if that fails, something, then it's more certain or something like that. Hypothetically, you're right. Yes, we could check first. This be like a prerequisite, or the last piece of data here, right? Last broadcast that it gave us, we're saving it, right? The last status of the online connection. If it's offline, then we don't even attempt to make a network request, directly go here or not do anything. Or if it's online, then yes, we could. I don't know actually if it's a good idea or not, to be honest.
I think
Very subjective.
before making any new requests, we should not check for the reachability notifier, because it may give us wrong results. But again, this is an implementation detail. We are assuming that it is not 100% correct, right? I mean, reachability notifier is not robust. We are assuming that. But if we assume that it's 100% robust, it will always give us the correct results. Either in that case as well, we should not ask for before making any new request that you are offline.
Do you think it's technical, Sandeep? Because this is pure like engineering side of it. How much do we trust the accuracy of this, right? I kind of think it should be a combination. In my mind, I'm thinking little reactive streams. There is a stream of data that's composed of the last status of this plus success or failure of any HTTP request made by this guy. And when those two come, then it gives you one Boolean answer of yes or no, online or offline. So this guy and ultimately the UI can react to it. Something like that. I don't know if I'm making sense. It would be so much easier for me to show you like RX zip stream, RX Swift zip stream, but some other time.
I got your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then in that case, then the decision box should be here between the feed service. This feed service and feed model depends on the internet connectivity, and then that throws the data to the view model.
Yeah, if you're asking whether the feed should inject this reachability and check, probably not. This
No.
is
Yeah,
that's
that's
that's all this guy. So orchestrator of everything is the business logic object. Although it is tempting, and I know people quite often overload the the service object with lots of crap, and they even notify, do other broadcasts through key value observation from it to whoever else is interested. It's probably not what you want to do. Which means, unfortunately, though, that there might be like a duplicate of the logic then, right? If you have another view model of another screen that needs to do something similar, then you might want to start thinking of an abstraction, I suppose. Actually, yeah, I can't think of anything right now, but you know where I'm going with this, guys, right?
Yeah.
It might not be too much logic duplication, though, so who knows? Yeah, this stuff's hard, actually, because most of the apps start with no offline whatsoever, and then eventually they're like, oh, crap, we need to have offline capabilities. And then you get into all of these decision making of where things supposed to be, and yeah. I do believe if you have such a split in one form or another of single responsibility objects, like something storing stuff, something doing networking requests, something checking the network, and then a business center to orchestrate, you'll be fine. You probably can build anything this way, I think, and it will be manageable. Of course, you can also break them apart and have multiple services and multiple storages and so on. I think it should be observer though. And then this is observer interface. That makes sense. That would be that private array of observers.
Wow, it looks like you are rewriting the notification center's implementation.
Well, kind of,
That
right? And
take
then
a set.
that's what we talked about. Unless you guys can tell me right now how to do the combine thing, so we don't.
No, I don't know combine. I
Me
never
neither.
used it.
And I'm too lazy to set up CocoaPods right now to get RX Swift.
So the observer will tell that the observer will tell the
So
state, right?
It
The
was set.
state is on.
Array.
it will basically
Add to the observers list, observers dot add, append
or append.
observer.
Yeah, and then eventually somewhere, and we don't have to implement that, or don't have to implement that, the notify observers of network status
State.
change, right? Something somewhere will call it internally in this guy, right? Don't know what. And I guess we do this where oh yeah, and
You
we
have
need
to make a method. Yeah. Network status has changed.
well, whatever.
Like is on or is off. We can make a
That's
bool.
true, right?
Boolean.
No, sorry. Yeah. Whatever. Well, yeah. People will get the point. And I guess we need the unsubscribe remove, huh? You're right. Fine. Let's do that. Remove.
These things we can leave for the users to that they can.
Yeah. Yeah, some people need to see this. Remove. Okay. I suppose this would be.
So who will be responsible for calling this method?
That would be the object that subscribes when it gets deallocated. It needs to clean up after itself. With RX, Swift, and all of those things, you can like automate that crap and have a disposable bag object instead that will do it. There's still boilerplate
Right.
like here. Yeah, this is more primitive. This is like very brute force, not brute force, but like a primitive way of doing it. Whatever, we don't have
Mhm.
time.
Mhm, mhm.
Now this whole crap starts. Oh, it has to be equitable. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. What if we call it any object? Will it shut up? It
What
doesn't
if
shut
we
up.
just call it as equitable instead? Just write it as equitable instead of any object.
Well, then we'll be forced to make like view
No,
models
no,
equitable, won't we?
no.
Because view
Just
models
write it
will
as equitable.
conform to this. No?
I mean, observer interface. Yeah, that's it. Oh my God. But why?
This might be some new
Again,
work.
this all,
This
yeah.
is because I have a beta version of this. Ah, I don't want to put equitable.
I think this problem must have been
Why this
resolved.
doesn't work though?
I don't know. Would you like to switch to the old Xcode? Mhm.
Uh,
So now you have since written the implementation. I want to call out one thing, that this observers should be set, right? Should be set or array. Okay, it should be array, right?
it
It should
should be a
not be a
set.
set.
You are very correct.
Set we have decided because
Right, because you can't have duplicate values, right? Yeah.
Yep. Does that work?
Nice. You're
Oh, that
pro
worked.
at it. Nice.
Eh. All right. So the view controller, super quick. Feed view controller. What is it? UI?
UI we have to import
Mhm.
UI kit foundation.
Yep. Thank you. So we got this. Let's just do a simple view model implementation because building like MVP would be a little more work, to be honest. View model. I've done so much of this, guys, with this refactor that I was telling you about. I am so sick of writing this and this, this and this all over again.
I used to prefer like means I don't directly inject this view model to the controller. I go through the protocols. Means I used to do that.
That is true, actually. Thank you. It should be protocol. Silly me.
You can go through this. I was just saying that I used to prefer that.
I mean, we should show proper code, right? As much as we can. We can't be Apple with their crappy examples. That's just too like
yeah, they
my
are very
professional
inherent.
dignity will not allow me.
Yeah, I means every example of theirs are in MVC. They're very
Yeah.
inherent to that.
Yeah. Okay. So it probably, what am I missing here? Nothing? Oh, look, it compiles. All right. And we need these two guys, don't we?
We need feed service. Yes.
Ooh. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Yes. And maybe this thing has some fetch data. Fetch. Yeah. And then, man, we don't have observables. I so want to write this. Like,
I can see you are in love with combine.
Oh, I
Hmm.
hate combine. Well, I don't hate
So why
combine.
you
But,
writing observable?
oh, RX Swift. RX Swift, baby.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, but they are one and the same thing, although there will be
With
some
one
subtle
exception.
differences.
With one
Mm.
exception. Combine cannot be unit tested synchronously because it's just they never thought of this. And RX
Really?
Swift can. Or at least last time I checked, which was a year ago or so.
Okay.
Otherwise, probably, yeah, I would like it to. I think just different names. Anyway, help me out, guys. How do I do a block completion thing? Like this?
Yeah, the same thing.
Like
I mean,
page completion. Yeah.
hmm,
Is it this?
yeah,
And
yep,
then
yep.
feed.
You
Feed.
can't have name of that parameter.
Can
Well, you can't
are you sure?
have a
I
name.
think I can. Can I?
I don't think so. Will it compile?
Well, let's find out.
No, it will not come. Well, it will not because of two reasons. Because at escape, oh wow, I think Xcode has gone mad. I can't believe this.
I know,
Really?
right? Ah, wait, it is mad because we don't implement this. It's supposed to fail.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, you
yeah.
are correct. It is mad. Let me clear it. Build. Finally. And now we probably have errors here too. Yes, of course.
Okay, great.
All right,
So
that makes
two
more
things
sense.
there. You have to write at escaping. Oh,
And this
this
doesn't
also
work.
didn't work.
Whatever. Whatever. Yes. Go,
Uh-huh.
sorry, you were saying I should write what?
So at escaping, this keyword should be written just after completion colon.
Got it.
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah.
Do I need the underscore though?
Oh, well, you can't have a name for.
Oh,
See.
you were
Yeah.
right. Look at you, Sandeep, knowing your Swift better than me. Ah. Oh yeah.
Again, you can't
We'll,
have underscore feeds as
it
well.
will keep failing.
Oh,
Hold on.
did it work?
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
so. It's just this thing probably is can I have that?
Uh,
No. Whatever.
Oh,
wait. Try,
just
try it.
instead of array, just also no, but you are,
Well,
it's okay.
I put it as set. I guess it's need to be to have it as hashable to have unique ID.
Yeah, just try to write there any hashable. Instead of any object, write any hashable.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. Okay, type self-constraint to non-protocol, non-class type, any hashable. Okay, write
This?
it as, yeah, okay. Inheritance from non-protocol, non-class type.
Plus any
Should
object.
work.
Oh. How about this? Crap.
I think they are one and the same thing.
Really?
Mm.
Ah, whatever. Do you guys just want to set it to an array and forget about it? Don't want to spend time on this. Yeah, that's right. Boo. Boo.
Well, there's no return state. Okay. Mm.
Oh.
Super.
No, yeah, look, we're basically doing the whole stub as you code situation, right? Whatever. All right, so we got this going on. And
Storage service.
right. Right. A little Saurabh, a little naming convention that Sandeep and I used to follow. Services are network related things. Storages are, well, storages. Anyway, it will be all right, Sandeep. Don't worry. uh, we're almost done. I hope.
Mhm.
And I suppose we can have this guy inject those, right?
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. Service.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. And this is the boilerplate. I don't want to be writing it. In TypeScript, you can, and I think in Kotlin, but in TypeScript, you can say this, like this, and not write this, and it will have the same effect. So much nicer. But whatever. Oh, and you wouldn't have to write this crap either. All right. No. Feed.
You didn't define it, of
Oh.
course. You haven't defined it yet.
I thought I did. I probably misspelled some. No?
Object.
Interesting.
I know, right? Is this file included in the target? It is. It's probably being dumb.
So there are 3 errors, I think.
It's been dumb.
Wow.
Yep.
Cache.
All
Export
right.
cache.
I know, right? And then you know what? And we don't even need to initialize this to do all of the injection. Like it's not an important part, right? To illustrate this. We have it showcased in the implementation, right? Unless you guys really want to create it somewhere. But I think all in all, we're done. And the last thing we need to mimic, like the whole feed fetching, right? So something like user has scrolled to the bottom, right? Oh, no, it's not a let, it's a func. And then here we tell the view model, fetch next page, I suppose. And then feed items, or do we call it feed? Well,
In.
so we're doing this. And then the view model will have that. Help me out here, guys. This.
Mm-hmm.
Something like this, right?
You have to close one more bracket there. Line number 2. Okay, you already closed it. Okay.
Did I?
No. That's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Well, I don't believe this thing anymore. Okay, no, it works. So
You
what
need to return it.
What are we trying to show though? Return what?
I mean, in the completion, instead of passing an array, empty array, you can just pass feed items in line number 16. Right? You are passing an empty array.
Yeah, but we don't have any. I mean, you mean like to
Oh,
fake it?
oh. Got it.
I mean, we can.
No. That's fine. That's fine. I'm. What I meant is, I mean, we can leverage the feed service and show them, okay,
Oh,
that we can, yeah.
oh. Sorry. I thought you're right. I thought I was in the service. My bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, wait, what? Is this it?
It should be.
Do stuff first. I suppose this is where we would talk to storage or something. To
And one more thing, we also need reachability notifier
yeah,
injected in this view model.
you do. Um, well, yeah. Okay, so that I guess okay. Let's take a step back. What are we trying to show again? I forgot at this point. We're trying to
So
show the two
essentially,
dents,
mm-hmm,
right? Which one to use or something, or orchestration.
mm-hmm. I
Mm.
mean, again, it depends upon how we want to architect it. So upon whenever reachability notifier tells us that we are offline, what should we do? Should we change the storage or should we change the service? Mm.
Mm. Mm. Well, mm, we could show right away. We could go for the scenario where when the view controller is loaded, we immediately trying to show stored data, and then in parallel we're fetching
Mm.
or something.
No, I don't think we should show the feed storage data first. Again, because after we get successful response, that already shown data will become outdated soon. And we have to, I mean,
That's
not
true.
just outdated, I mean, we will eventually replace it with the new data. So
Yeah.
we should just show a loader instead of showing the old data. And this old data should only be shown while we are offline, right?
So if this fails and the reachability notifier says you're offline, then we show this
Right.
guy's data. But would
Right.
that be only for the first page or for any?
For any, I mean,
Mm.
pagination is an independent concept, right? Pagination is responsibility of this view model or view controller, that whatever data it has got, it should just paginate it, no matter it is from the feed storage or it is from feed service.
Mm. It's true. Let's see. Well, now we need a failure block.
I mean, we can just simplify it. If we don't get any feeds, we can just check if there are no feeds. We will just simply ask the notifier delegate. First, we have to become the delegate. I mean, this view model needs to become a delegate of reachability notifier. So in the init method, we have to write reachability notifier dot delegate equal
Yeah.
to self.
One sec.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, we do.
Uh,
Was it delegate
mhm.
observer?
Yeah.
And Well, yeah. And then here, since we're not using observables, really, we have to do it more imperatively, right? Last network status.
Right. We could have done one more thing, like we could have exposed one variable in the observer reachability notifier
I know
interface.
what you mean. Then,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Like I
But
just
that would
don't want to do it for this example because that would be
right,
defeating the
right,
purpose
right,
of the
right, right,
observer. Yeah,
right.
but I agree with you. Yes, for simplicity's sake, why
Mm-hmm.
not? I think
Right.
one of those published subjects behaves this way. It stores the
Mm-hmm.
last, and whoever subscribes to it gets it immediately or whatever.
Right.
And and we need the default, huh? Well, I suppose we sort of like here we actually kind of do need it, don't we? Because we have to
Sorry,
set
I
it.
didn't get it.
Well, we have to set initial value for this. And if the reachability notifier has that,
Mm-hmm.
mm, I, you know what?
You have to write that statement
We do have to have
before.
it after all, don't we?
I got your point. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to start with something.
Again, we are in such a loophole that
Uh,
even if we don't want to implement anything, we had to implement
we
everything.
have, yeah,
At least something, not if not everything.
right. This is why it's so hard, I guess, to show samples of
Yeah.
things. Ah,
Yeah.
but we will prevail.
You have to write. Okay, that's fine.
Whatever. And then I mean it's not important. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Look, in such a short span of time, we have made a reachability notifier. Nice.
sure.
Hmm.
Oh, I put it in the wrong thing. I put it in the wrong thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Right. So what do we do now? If this fails,
Hmm.
oops,
Mm-hmm.
or rather, okay, happy path is probably easier.
Mm-hmm.
So happy path is, oh, and we got a store, don't we? So we do
Mm-hmm.
storage,
You have to
save,
expose some methods in it. Yeah.
yeah. Storage. I that
It will be an
it's
array of feed.
yes. Um
You should do nothing here.
yeah, that's true. Mm, my God. Can't think straight anymore. I don't know how you guys holding up. I'm already tired. And it's morning for me. All right. Is it right? Yes. All right. So here we're saving it.
Mm-hmm.
And if so the failure, right? If on top of the failure, lost network status, is something. So if that falls, well, can I do this for like more verboseness, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Then we really know we have no internet connection.
Mm-hmm.
We should have made it a presenter because I really want to say view, show, no. Well, wait, hold on. No, I'm sorry. Getting confused.
Show from local.
We get from storage. Yes, thank you. And then
You have to expose feed items from local storage interface as well.
Get data, get feed.
something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it needs to be a specific page or group or something, but I don't think we should dwell into those details.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, obviously.
Unless you want to, guys.
Feed.
Yep. Right. Does that work?
You also need to have one written
Return.
statement.
Return empty. Feed.
Thank you. Oops. How about now?
You also have to write an else case.
What would be else?
So that will be the product call now. So if the product wants to retry, it can retry, or it wants to show any error state. So initially I didn't visualize it like this. I thought that I will just swap some service in the view model and the rest
I
of the
think we
logic.
did talk about that though too.
Mm-hmm.
We could, and that would be both storage and service conform into, say, this interface, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then
Mhm.
you, I mean, I suppose you could. I think in upkeep code we had something like that, and it confused the hell out of me personally.
Okay. Okay. Mhm.
But I mean, we can.
Mm-hmm. This feed view model, let's suppose that the app was initially made for just online mode, right? And that feed view model is written just once. Okay. Now after some time the product comes to us and asks for the offline capability. Now we are stuck. We now are breaking the solid rule. That means open close principle. Now you are changing the implementation of this view model just to add one more mode to it, right? Could we have just switched one dependency from outside, I don't know from where, and just triggers the offline mode, which just triggers the offline mode without changing anything inside this fetch next page. Now we have if and else block here, right? I just don't want it to do that.
Actually, I thought while implementing this, I thought like, why not to tell the service that service is giving me the data and the view model don't know, means I don't have to change that data. Means if the service knows that it has to return that data. So whether it is dependent on the internet capability, it is returning from the internet or from the local.
So I hear you guys. The reason why we can't is because of this. There is orchestration that needs to happen upon success, for example, besides orchestration upon failure. We if we let a singular service type of object to just tell us what the next feed group is, we who's gonna save it when we successfully fetch it? Then that other feed needs to have the storage itself then in turn, right? Or something.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get rid of this logic. You still have to place it somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was in two minds that time.
Yeah,
That
no,
time.
yeah, and it's very tricky. And that's how people ended up screwing up their service object, which does networking. They also put this storage orchestration in it. So what I've seen, a cleaner way to address it is either do this, what we have right now, where just the central business logic one is orchestrating it, or people argue for repository object or manager object, which encompasses these two and does it. And then the view model only injects that manager / repository. Good. I'm not opposed to that. I personally usually just go for this because it's clear to me. Or sorry, I'm more used to it, but I have no
I have a
argument for
suggestion.
why to.
I have a suggestion here. So we can have another view model which actually decides which feed view model will be used in the controller. And suppose if it's a online feed view model, then we will execute the else part. And if it's an offline view model, we will execute the if part.
But we don't
And
know.
both can have.
We don't know though, because online view
Yes,
model.
yes, that decision will be taken by that view model, that special view model, which will have reachability as an injected thing in it, right? I don't want reachability notifier to be part of feed view model. I don't want it to be part of the offline feed view model. I just want it to be part of another view model, which is going to decide who will going to be the actual feed view model of the view controller. In that way, we are preserving that open close principle. Right here, we have changed the internal implementation of this feed view model. But by going that route, we are not touching this feed view model. This will remain as it is. Instead of this, we are making another view model, offline feed view model, which will work at our vim if we want to show something else. Yeah.
And it will conform to the same interface?
It will conform to the same interface,
I
but
see.
will.
So you're going for decorator object, essentially.
Decorator.
Or one of those, wrapper decorator. No, decorator, because it implements the same interface. You have outer
Yes.
object that decorates inner object. But
No,
both
but I
conforms.
don't want. Yeah, but I think decorator is something which actually encapsulates. I mean, I would have called it decorator if it encapsulates this feed view model in it, right? Or no?
Well, this feed view model will become a decorator of that new view model that you're advocating for, I think.
No. I don't want to go that route. I will make a offline feed view model, which will just conform to feed view model interface. That's it.
Right. And then this guy will inject it.
This guy will not inject it. No.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. There will be another view model on top of those two view models.
Let's sketch it out.
Like base view model.
No, it will not actually a base view model.
Let's sketch it out. See where we end up. So you want to have this, and what does it inject? Does it inject?
Yeah, remove the reachability notifier from here.
Remove it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just implement the fetch next page here. Just keep the line number 21.
Just keep that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't even need the feed service now. So we can remove the feed service also.
Oh, because it's offline.
Injected variable.
That's right.
Yes.
All right.
We can also remove it line number 14. Yeah.
Okay.
And in the feed view model, we don't need reachability notifier here. Instead of removing, let's make another view model so that we can
keep this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Or the.
I mean, make another view model
Yeah.
I mean, it will not actually be a view model. You can call it something like a manager or something which is taking decision which view model needs to be injected. What do you call it? A factory? Maybe a factory you can call it.
Okay.
Not a factory actually, because factory is something else.
Well, okay. Let's start building it out, and we'll see what it will be. So, does it still conform to this?
Wait, the
So
one
that's
I'm
the
talking about two view models here.
yes. That would be that second one. Well, I'm just keeping this implementation for reference.
Okay. So it will not, yes, it will still conform to feed view model interface, but it will not conform to the reachability notifier observer interface. Yeah.
So it does not inject this.
Yeah. Please don't inject this. Remove this.
But who does though? Because if you have
I-
this and this guy,
I will tell you. Yes. Yes.
okay,
I'm
fine.
going to tell you that.
All right.
Also remove the last network status.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
Storage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's two. Now
Storage
I just need the else part here. We do need storage here because we want to save that data in the
Gotcha.
storage, right?
So this.
Yeah. So again, we don't need to retrieve the feed items from the, because we are not dealing with the offline mode, right?
Got it. Wait. Got it. All right.
I mean, we just need the else part.
I guess it. Oops. It works like this.
Mhm.
I mean,
And in the else part, product can decide whatever it wants to do. I mean, there could be cases that we end up in the online view model state, but eventually while making the network request, we don't get anything, right? Now I want a decision maker class, an object which actually decides which view model I'm going to inject. Like you can call it anything like manager, view model in manager, or list manager, anything. Basically, it's not a view model, but it's kind of a manager, feed manager. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I
Now,
see what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah.
Make feed VM.
Right. And this guy will now take input as these three parameters: feed service, feed storage, and the reachability interface. Now you
Okay.
can just copy that stuff right from
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Actually, you can copy the whole class and then
Make this as a feed view manager.
yeah.
Well. All right. Let's see, guys. Let's see. Oops.
That's fine. So instead of fetch next page, right? Yeah. So here we are
Yeah,
going
we
to
don't
use
want that.
this, right? Now we will just check if the
Sorry. Last.
Oh, yeah.
And then here you return in the normal one,
So
or you return in the offline one.
Yes.
Right.
storage.
So
Right.
there is one thing with this. I see what you mean. Two things. This is a different scenario. That's what we talked through initially, where you, upon entry into the screen, you decide in what mode it would be, and it cannot switch its own mode at runtime. This approach allows you to switch behavior at runtime.
No, wait. That approach also can achieve the same behavior. I mean, that's upon us again, that's upon the product. So we can again query the feed manager, hey, return me the feed. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
Okay,
because it
we
doesn't
can make
conform
feed
to the
manager robust. Okay, I got your point. Hmm.
unless we make it implement this too. I suppose.
Or it reads the data returned by the feed view model too.
Right. And it also needs to know when the feed view model fails, right? To do this
Yeah.
check.
That's what I said, that
Mhm.
it will need to check the data written by the feed view model.
Yeah.
That's the caveat.
No, I understand where I would argue if you follow architecture like Viper or Ribs, you will end up in something like this, where you will have a bunch of very dumb service storage and similar utility auxiliary objects around your, like this onion architecture circle, right? Uh, this, right? This around here, this is your storage object, this is your UI service and so on. And then like as you go inner, you're getting closer to your interactor or view model or whatever you call it. And that's when manipulating what they do and orchestrating happens. I suppose it's subjective, but my argument is this is the single responsibility of the view model to orchestrate. It does not save shit. It does not fetch shit. It tells other things to do it.
Yeah, and it's easy to test that. Like, means if I pass mock this service with a blank data, means blank array, then it just reads from my local DB and just means gives us the test results.
Yeah.
I've done that also. But I don't know.
Yeah. Again, I guess like the only thing that I've heard and people, I sort of agree that you could wrap into a repository or manager or something, and then in there you will get data either from offline, or if you're online you save, and then the view model relies only on that repository thing.
Yeah, dependencies with the view model, like with those.
Maybe, I mean, maybe. And then that repository can be used by a bunch of different view models or interactors. Maybe. I personally never built it like that because I haven't had a need to share this part of business logic, because I'm usually have probably one feed for the app, then one another list for the app, usually, right? But I guess you could. Maybe comments. If you're displaying comments or reviews or something like that for a e-commerce application, you might show it in different parts of the app. And maybe you need to share that repository between different interactors or something. I don't know. Nothing wrong with that, I guess. Oh, guys, we're so deep in the rabbit hole, huh?
Alex, oh, I think in the manager we can get around this problem. So since we are mm, listening to the reachability notifier, we can make those decisions whenever the network status change. And if we are sure about that, then we can just return the new feed view model and ask the controller to update its view hierarchy. Or whenever the view hierarchy gets the empty feed, it asks the manager, hey manager, my view hierarchy is empty. So it can just it can just again go through the make feed VM method, check the network status, and returns the view model. Hey, this is the view model.
It's true. No, I agree. Then I suppose the view controller owns this to swap the view model under the hood. Another issue with it is the view model right now, because of our simplistic implementation, doesn't have any state, but it will keep track of state. on which page you are and stuff like that. So if you swap it, or what was displayed already, if you swap it with another view model, now you need to transfer state or something, I guess.
But that's already happening in this implementation as well, because we are just sending them the feeds from the old storage, no matter on which page we are, right?
I don't know. I'm confused.
I mean, see, the line number 103, you are still returning the feed storage, no matter on which page you are. You are just returning the
Oh
same
no, that's
feed
only for the
storage.
failure.
Right, for the failure case, I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, because I guess we didn't build, like, we just didn't. We were too hasty to build it. We really
Right,
should
but
be.
you are talking about the same problem, right, in the manager, or something else you're talking about.
I'm saying that, let's say we had multiple success cases in the online
Mm-hmm.
view model. So we're like on
Mm-hmm.
page 3, but then all of a sudden you're swapping the view model to another one that has just this. It
Okay,
now needs to know on which page the other view model was, at least. How does it know it?
but the same problem is with this approach as well, because this also doesn't know on which page
Well,
we
no,
are.
well, yeah, because we didn't build
Here
it.
we have
We should have some variable here
yeah
of like items
page item or page number or
or
something.
page now. Yeah, well, likely, yeah, either or, right?
But manager can also track of the same thing, of course, because at the end it's a feed manager. It should know about the feed, the feeds.
uh, yes. So, and how would it know about it when it's only producing these two? It's not holding objects. Like, how would it know?
Maybe the view controller
As
needs
of
to
right now, it's a
tell that.
factory, really, just a glorified factory. Or not glorified, it's literally a factory with a different name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then, well, yeah, exactly. And then do you give it to the view controller? Oh, you probably don't want the UI to actually keep track of that stuff.
So who will keep track of the feed
The,
manager? I mean, whose responsibility is to keep the instance of the feed manager?
it depends on what you wanted this thing to do, right? If you wanted to just only produce
Mm-hmm.
new VMs, whoever, it can even be created on the fly. Well, actually, no, it can't because of the dependencies. Never mind.
Mm-hmm.
My perspective is that since we are injecting a view model at the start of the app, oh, sorry, not of the app, at the start of this screen of this view controller, that, and it is a let as of right now. I guess we can make it a var and swap it. Then the swapping either happens from the outside, it's a public var, or from the inside. Then if it happens from the inside, then the view controller needs to own, I guess, the feed manager in
That
this case
manager.
that will produce the new ones. I feel like that complicates it.
Right, but the only problem I was trying to solve here is was to prevent the open close principle violation.
So
Right.
can you walk me through what are we violating here again?
So suppose you, as you said, that most of the apps are made for the online mode, right?
Yeah.
So we would have just made the feed view model and implemented the fetch next page,
Yeah,
right?
we would have
Without taking
had
in,
we would have
we
had
would have just
only
the else part,
this.
right?
Yes.
Right. Now,
Well,
so the
even
product
without
comes to
that,
us.
huh?
Yeah, even without that. Now the product comes to us that, hey, we want this to be in offline mode as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now the open close principle says that you should not change the internal implementation of the already implemented part. You should have either extended it. You should have instead extended it, right? But now we are actually changing the implementation of this
Well, we
to
are
accommodate the
true,
offline
but
mode.
we are changing the behavior of this, right? Well, like, we literally, this is the thing we're changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess what else So you want, I guess your desire here is to
I just don't want to touch this
ideally
feed view
just
model.
inject something new with a new behavior, but keep this thing as it is. Is that really
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Can you though?
That's what I was trying to achieve using manager, but it
Actually,
has some caveats.
but Sandeep, this is complete behavior change in the application.
Mhm.
So for that means, I guess it's a new thing it will become. Not only like we are showing just the list.
Mhm.
So okay,
So
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Saurabh, I'm with you. I'm with you there, right? But Sanjeev, I think you're correct though technically if we follow in solid principles. So I think I would say this: if we are really truly want to preserve that, right, solid principles and open close, then we cannot touch this, right? Like this thing can't touch, right? Let's assume this because this is we can't. So the only thing you can do is to change the behavior of things you're injecting. And in this scenario, you were injecting really only one thing, right? You were injecting this guy, this service, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you need to create a new instance of this service that will do your new behavior of, I suppose, doing all of this. That is the only way you can achieve it. And then you have open close principle
Right.
and you have two services. Service.
But again, we are violating the open close principle.
No, wait. But why? Hold on. You, at this moment in time, in your code base, you only have this class implemented and this class. You have nothing else. Then you are creating a new class that conforms to the same interface, but it's a completely new code. You're not violating any principle. You're
Got it.
writing new
Got
code
it. Got it.
in
Got
which
it. New code.
you
Mhm.
will have this stuff.
So there are two ways to say that. So you can say that, okay, I have made a brand new class, feed service, offline plus online feed service.
Exactly.
Or I can say that I have changed the original implementation of the feed service to accommodate the offline mode as well. So if I say the
Well,
second thing, I'm I'm violating the open close principle. But
yeah,
if I say the first thing, I'm just using a new class, passing it, but and keeping the and actually discarding the old class. So
well,
that's
are you
the
discarding the old class? Hold on. Why would you the oh, I see. So you're thinking because you think you're altering the old class because you have to have this now?
no, don't think about this. What I'm saying, like, we have just one we have just found a workaround to not violate the open close principle by not changing the original implementation, but instead
Okay.
making a new class and discarding the old class.
Okay, I now I get it. I think we were talking about slightly different things, but I understand shit. It's so hard to explain. I get what you mean. Okay. Uh, yes. Yes. I think you're right. And I suppose it's unavoidable, actually, right? Because exactly what Saurabh said. Either way you put it in here in this view model, you will alter it because you add a new behavior. Or we create a brand new implementation for a new class that, yeah, and then we discard the old class, but it's the same, it's the same thing. You just sort of cheat, you pretend that you didn't. Because
Yes.
I feel like that's because it's unavoidable, isn't it?
Yeah, but if we
Well,
go by the manager way, again, I'm advocating for that approach, even though it has some caveats. But if we go by that, we can actually spare ourselves from violating this principle, open close principle. Although I know this approach has some caveats that view controller has to own it or someone has to own it and keep track of the feeds and all.
what I am thinking, can we expose one more method in the service to bring data in case No, but that will also not work. Means again we're doing the same thing,
I
changing
know,
the
right? It's so
yeah.
we got to like we narrowed down the problem to like the last smallest sort of thing, and now we're trying to fit it. It yeah.
One more thing, imagine on the service level, at the service layer, if when the service talks to the client, so there, if we have something to check whether that we have internet or not, so instead of talking to the client, it just return the same method to with the in the same method that all those bunch of objects from the local DB.
Wait, what do you mean? Can you
I mean, I
rephrase?
mean that means what we are doing over here in view model. Okay, so at the service layer, when the layer is talking to the HTTP client, at that point of time we check that whether it has internet or
Okay,
not.
got it. Yeah, yeah. So what we discussed before, come
Yeah,
injecting this into that guy. Yeah,
and then
you could. You're making this fat.
again, somewhere we have to
Yeah,
compromise that.
you have to give somewhere, right?
Yeah,
And to me personally, and I know it might not be the answer for like some people, some interviewers, right, that they would like. For me, the guiding principle now it
yeah,
boils down to
I've heard of it.
architecture, right? The chosen architecture, where do you, what's that place where you kind of give in a little business logic, I suppose, that will be
Yeah,
changing more,
yeah.
unfortunately, even though conceptually Sandeep, yeah, open close principle, but
Depends on the use case. Yeah, we have to implement. We have to
Let me
change our business logic.
let me add one more thing.
uh-huh.
So essentially, we are always violating the open close principle whenever we are adding a new feature, because ultimately we need to touch at least one file, right?
Let me think.
Yeah,
I think you're right. But let me think.
every time we add
I
something,
suppose, actually, you're
then we have,
right. There's at least one
Yeah.
time, because even if you purely, literally added like everything new and kept the old behavior untouched whatsoever, right? But now you have a new object. There is an if else now at some point where you inject a new object, right, for the new behavior. So that would be the clause touched
yeah.
for and violates the open close principle. I guess you
I
just
guess,
narrow down how many of those violations you do by following all of this to only the bare minimum, but you'll still at least do one, huh?
but
I think
what?
Saurabh, you should have tell this thing to your interviewer. Hey, we are anyways violating the open close principle at least once,
Yeah, means
right?
means when the business logic change, means if we are implementing something new, then obviously we have to touch that file.
Yeah, this is, I like this. This is getting to like this almost like a philosophical discussion of for change and stuff. No, seriously.
Yeah.
But things to learn. Yeah,
Yeah. It reminds me of this concept. It's also hard to explain, but um all of these people, this in grand scheme of things, everyone trying to come up with a new framework, new architectural, like yes, today MVC is great, tomorrow Viper is awesome, and the day after that they came up with Redux or whatever crap, right? And every single time they're like, this is better, this is less work, this is less shit to take care of, but
Mhm.
you can never ever get rid of, like, you only move it around,
yeah,
you always will have to make those changes. Is they're just made somewhere else or for you a little bit, but they still are made.
yeah,
And that's what people don't understand with all of those frameworks and like new shiny crap. Unavoidable. And we just, I think we just kind of came to that
yeah.
conclusion
We
in
had
our
made
miniature example.
we have made a session on this also, that we have narrowed down the things, and at one thing we are like just not trying to violate any principle and all. So how to do that? Yeah.
Mm.
Subscribe and hit that notification button so you never miss the next episode.